Lou, as a criminal defense attorney, how would you defend Nick Reiner?
The obvious play is going to be not guilty by reason of insanity. It's not easy to prove, though.
As a seasoned criminal defense lawyer who's dealt with countless serious cases, if I were representing Nick Reiner, the strongest and most straightforward defense would be not guilty by reason of insanity. It's extremely difficult to establish in court, however. From the outside, Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner's 36-year marriage appeared flawless, the kind of deep, lasting romance you rarely see outside classic films. Every photograph, every public appearance together portrayed them as unbreakable, a couple untouched by turmoil or loss. The world assumed their connection was strong enough to survive any challenge. But beneath that perfect surface, a far darker reality had been developing for years. Silence doesn't always signal harmony. Sometimes it conceals decades of unspoken suffering. In what turned out to be Rob Reiner's last major CBS interview, recorded shortly before the devastating events, he could no longer keep the reality hidden. Inside their home, there had been endless conflicts, nights without sleep due to anguish over their son Nick's substance abuse, and times when their relationship came dangerously close to breaking apart. The appearance of serenity fell away, revealing the intense pain that had been suppressed for so long. They remained together not because their life was simple, but because separating would have shattered the remaining family their children depended on. Their devotion served as their lifeline, even while it drained them completely. Then, in a sudden and merciless turn no one anticipated, catastrophe arrived without warning, permanently halting their story. When CBS aired Rob Reiner's final on-camera appearance, viewers saw not a celebrated director, but a broken man exhausted from years of silent struggle. His face bore the deep marks of grief and fatigue, revealing more than words ever could. Under the bright studio lights, it was evident this was no picture of glory or control, but of someone who had sacrificed everything for love and received mostly loss in return. The composed, assured figure the public remembered was gone. Instead, there sat a man completely depleted, his voice shaking from a lifetime of buried hurt. The production team had no idea at the time. To succeed with an insanity defense, you must demonstrate that the defendant could not distinguish right from wrong at the time of the offense. That requires extensive expert analysis and forensic evidence. You examine every piece of data, social media activity, emails, text messages, medical records, to determine whether the individual truly lacked that understanding. But in that moment, they were capturing what would become Rob Reiner's final public revelation, a moment preserved forever. He stated from the start that he wasn't there to discuss new projects or reflect on his career achievements. "I'm here," he said softly, "because it's time to speak the truth, particularly about my family." He described their well-known home, the one often showcased in magazines as an emblem of achievement and calm, and revealed that behind those walls existed years of silence, so oppressive it was unbearable. There were extended periods without meaningful words, where affection grew distant, where being physically present felt like emotional absence. He acknowledged that his intense focus on directing, scripting, and pursuing creative excellence had sometimes caused him to miss what was happening right beside him. Michelle gradually withdrawing into her own isolated world. "I believed silence meant tranquility," he said with obvious pain. "But I later understood it can also mean desertion." Those statements struck the entire studio crew profoundly. Rob continued by describing the pivotal moment his life changed, meeting Michelle Singer on the set of When Harry Met Sally in 1989. She altered everything for him. The film's initial ending was sorrowful, reflecting his own pain after ending his marriage to Penny Marshall. But when Michelle, a talented young photographer visiting her friend, cinematographer Barry Sonnenfeld, arrived on set, something shifted inside him. Rob recalled with a faint smile how Barry immediately told him, "You're not going to marry Michelle Pfeiffer. You're going to marry my friend Michelle Singer." And Barry was correct. Before Michelle, Rob said he always felt something was missing. He had created successful movies, but his life seemed only partially lived. Meeting her made him realize what genuine love truly felt like. That emotion led him to rewrite the film's conclusion, transforming despair into optimism, allowing Harry and Sally to reunite on New Year's Eve just as he and Michelle had come together. Months later, they married in Hawaii during a quiet, unplanned ceremony attended only by two strangers. "We weren't merely spouses," Rob said with pride. "We were true partners. She completed me." Yet no one recognized at the time that even as their relationship seemed ideal, underlying fractures were already forming. The peak of their fulfillment coincided with the beginning of their gradual separation, subtle, gradual, and increasingly painful over time. Rob then shared the small daily details that made his marriage to Michelle authentic. He smiled faintly while explaining their contrasting parenting approaches with their three children. He was the lenient one, always indulging them, while Michelle maintained structure and discipline. That dynamic likely kept their household stable for so long, his abundant affection balanced by her firm grounding. Beyond romance and partnership, Michelle was his inspiration, the core energy behind his finest work, the steady presence during difficulties, the gentle voice that kept him centered. "Without Michelle," Rob said, his gaze distant, "I don't know who I would have been." When the discussion turned to being a father, his emotion intensified. Despite all his Hollywood accomplishments, Rob insisted his greatest fulfillment wasn't directing blockbuster films, it was holding his newborns for the first time. He spoke of the sensation of a tiny infant against his chest, that small heartbeat syncing with his own, and the unspoken vow he made to always be their protection no matter how harsh the world became. His paternal love wasn't flashy or overt, but profound and enduring, something he believed would never diminish. But gradually, that equilibrium began to collapse. The turning point arrived when their son Nick, the family's former source of greatest pride, started to transform. Rob's voice faltered as he recalled the initial indicators. Late arrivals home, subtle traces of smoke, eyes that avoided contact. He admitted noticing them, but convincing himself they were normal adolescent changes. Then the financial requests began, minor at first for outings or entertainment, then larger and more regular. Eventually, explanations ceased entirely. In private, Rob and Michelle debated in hushed tones, attempting to remain composed so Nick wouldn't overhear. One evening, Michelle suggested they stop providing help, but Rob refused. "He's our son," he maintained. "He needs us." Unseen to him, the boundary between support and enabling was vanishing. Their once joyful home began resembling a battlefield. Rob described the worst episodes, nights when Nick pounded on their bedroom door, yelling in a voice unrecognizable as his own. One time he physically shoved Rob against a wall while Michelle remained paralyzed in fear. "I didn't recognize my son," Rob said, his voice cracking. "I saw an unfamiliar person in my child's body." When asked why he never contacted authorities, Rob bowed his head and murmured, "Because I'm a father." He confessed his terror, that a single call could ruin Nick's future, that media coverage would distort everything, that his son would be permanently labeled. Yet he knew the most difficult reality. No amount of intense love can always rescue someone you would sacrifice everything for. There were evenings when everything unraveled privately. Nick would explode, leave in anger, and create disorder. The ensuing quiet was often more oppressive than the conflict. Rob said the most painful aspect wasn't the aggression or destruction. It was still welcoming him back, still clinging to hope that change would come. When Nick returned seeking funds, Rob admitted knowing he was being manipulated but fearing total loss if he refused. He described it as the slowest form of betrayal, one that shatters a parent's heart gradually. "Our son let us down," Rob stated. "But we let ourselves down too, lacking the courage to stop." Fear and refusal to accept reality replaced direct action. Rather than seeking assistance, he selected silence, a silence that became its own confinement. Nevertheless, Rob insisted he never stopped loving Nick. Even during frightening moments, he still saw the young boy who once relied on him. That love was both solace and burden, a guiding light and a restricting chain. Yet that same love started dividing the family. The harder Rob and Michelle worked to shield their son, the further they grew from each other. The home's former joy became strained silences, averted looks, and endless circular discussions. No one could identify the precise instant they ceased functioning as partners, but both sensed it, a gradual separation born from years of fatigue and sorrow. It didn't erupt, it eroded, until love, their former greatest asset, became the source of their conflicts. Rob said the most draining element wasn't external criticism, it was the deception. People view the images, he said quietly. The smiles at events, the gatherings, they assume that's reality. But inside, it was far from calm. Countless evenings ended in silence after disputes that left nothing worth saying. Every disagreement returned to the children, not from animosity, but from love manifested in entirely opposing ways. You would sacrifice everything for. There were evenings when everything unraveled privately. Nick would explode, leave in anger, and create disorder. The ensuing quiet was often more oppressive than the conflict. Rob said the most painful aspect wasn't the aggression or destruction. It was still welcoming him back, still clinging to hope that change would come. When Nick returned seeking funds, Rob admitted knowing he was being manipulated but fearing total loss if he refused. He described it as the slowest form of betrayal, one that shatters a parent's heart gradually. Our son let us down, Rob stated. But we let ourselves down too, lacking the courage to stop. Fear and refusal to accept reality replaced direct action. Rather than seeking assistance, he selected silence, a silence that became its own confinement. Nevertheless, Rob insisted he never stopped loving Nick. Even during frightening moments, he still saw the young boy who once relied on him. That love was both solace and burden, a guiding light and a restricting chain. Yet that same love started dividing the family. The harder Rob and Michelle worked to shield their son, the further they grew from each other. The home's former joy became strained silences, averted looks, and endless circular discussions. No one could identify the precise instant they ceased functioning as partners, but both sensed it, a gradual separation born from years of fatigue and sorrow. It didn't erupt, it eroded, until love, their former greatest asset, became the source of their conflicts. Rob said the most draining element wasn't external criticism, it was the deception. People view the images, he said quietly. The smiles at events, the gatherings, they assume that's reality. But inside, it was far from calm. Countless evenings ended in silence after disputes that left nothing worth saying. Every disagreement returned to the children, not from animosity, but from love manifested in entirely opposing ways. Michelle sought order and consequences. She wanted Nick to confront reality. Rob simply wanted his children near, regardless of price. One night Michelle declared they couldn't continue this way. Rob remained silent, afraid any response would distance her more. Their disputes weren't always loud confrontations. They were quiet midnight admissions in the kitchen. Michelle once asked, "Are you safeguarding our son or your image of a perfect father?" Rob's reply was barely audible. "If I release him, I lose him." That statement created an unbridgeable gap. Matters worsened after a particularly bad incident involving Nick. Michelle, trembling with fury and despair, reached for the phone declaring she would call law enforcement. Rob blocked her, begging, "Please don't. He's our son," his voice breaking. Michelle cried from sheer weariness, not fear. "You're prioritizing him," she said, "and abandoning me." Rob couldn't refute it. "I love you," he murmured. "But I love our son too. I don't know how to avoid losing both." That evening nearly ended their marriage. Divorce was discussed, luggage appeared then returned to storage. Rob said it was the first time he genuinely feared their family wouldn't endure, not from insufficient love, but from excess pulling opposite directions. They argued not over celebrity or wealth, but over the children they cherished most. Michelle demanded responsibility, Rob sought shielding. He couldn't tolerate seeing his son restrained. Michelle responded coldly, "And I can't continue living in constant fear." Both were valid, making the pain worse. Rob admitted choosing silence over honesty to preserve unity. "Perhaps," he said softly, "I only extended the suffering." Those disputes didn't destroy them instantly. They wore them down gradually, like constant drops eroding rock. The public still viewed their ideal family image, but Rob said reality was far more complex. Contentment doesn't require absence of flaws, he noted quietly. It means acknowledging flaws and still remaining. Then his voice trailed off. "But everything has a cost, and I'm unsure if we paid correctly." It wasn't only Nick. Jake and Romy faced their own unspoken difficulties, never publicized. Discussing them, Rob's tone carried a constant quiet sorrow, like an unending wound. Jake grew up surrounded by ease, perhaps excessive ease. He never faced necessity, Rob explained. Intelligent, but lacking motivation. Whenever progress seemed possible, excuses emerged. Not prepared, wrong timing, world too difficult. Rob always relented, believing maturity would come. Romy differed, driven, outspoken, accustomed to prevailing. Initial minor requests evolved into ongoing financial reliance. Small amounts first, then rent, then loans never repaid. Michelle's expressions often conveyed unspoken concern. Rob would respond, "She's our daughter." Their Brentwood residence, formerly a haven, symbolized love and family's complexities. When Romy claimed feeling unsafe distant, Rob immediately acquiesced to her demand for a nearby private, luxurious home. Michelle was outraged. Are we aiding or damaging her? Rob had no reply, only remorse. He ultimately agreed. I couldn't bear my daughter being unhappy. Jake remained in the pattern too. The home became quieter, more comfortable, yet strangely hollow. At dinner, conversation ceased, Rob recalled. I'd observe my children and question if they truly desired independent lives. The greatest heartbreak wasn't their reliance. It was Michelle's quiet despair. She never raised her voice, only murmured, "We're depleting." Rob never clarified whether she meant resources or trust. He knew. He admitted selecting the simpler route, providing rather than teaching, satisfying rather than raising properly. I feared losing my children so much, Rob confessed, that I lost myself. Each request eroded him further, yet he continued. Asked about regret, he paused long, then nodded. I regret believing we had more time, he said. Families disintegrate not from single catastrophes, but from countless minor instances allowed to pass. Then, for the first time, he faced the camera directly, eyes filled with weight yet clarity, addressing Michelle as if present. His voice lowered. If you're seeing this, I comprehend now. Just far too late. Those became Rob Reiner's closing statements before absolute studio silence. No crew noise, no equipment sound. That quiet carried more weight than any score. When the interview concluded, no one knew it would be Rob's last public moment before permanent farewell. After his death, CBS rebroadcast the entire discussion as a tribute special, complete, unedited, profoundly human. No dramatic overlay, no extra sentiment. Just Rob under unforgiving lights, vulnerable yet honest, with a storyteller, a husband, a father displayed quietly. Toward the broadcast's end, CBS added previously unseen footage. Rob asked the interviewer softly, "Do you believe my family will find happiness?" After hesitation, the reply, "Happiness will arrive soon." Rob nodded gradually, eyes closing as if releasing a lifelong burden. When the tribute aired, viewers paused in shock. Rob and Michelle had long been viewed as Hollywood's ideal pair, smart, affectionate, stable. Revealing the concealed suffering behind public smiles and events stunned millions. Many couldn't watch completely in one viewing. It felt too authentic. Rob's discussion of fear, quietude, and evading reality resonated deeply. He didn't resemble a star. He sounded like a father conflicted internally. Audiences recognized a disturbing truth. Catastrophe sometimes originates not from outsiders, but within the homes considered safest. Media labeled it a final admission, but for many it seemed a delayed plea for aid. Rob's composed delivery intensified the chill, a man exhausted from shouting, accustomed to suffering without resistance. Then arrived the fateful December 14th, mere weeks later. News struck like lightning. The family believed to have achieved peace was abruptly lost. Rob and Michelle discovered deceased in their residence. More shocking, their son Nick, the child Rob dedicated his life protecting, was responsible. All Rob dreaded, all he labored to avoid, occurred devastatingly. The silence selected from love became the force that ruined everything. His interview words haunted like echoes, fearing child loss. When CBS replayed footage, tears flowed freely. Each phrase now seemed valedictory, an unwitting final message. He had mentioned remaining time, causing widespread breakdown. Time existed, but no one confronted reality soon enough. Public view shifted entirely afterward. Former inspiring family images became eerie. People questioned how many households endured similar hidden narratives, public smiles masking private collapse. The scariest element wasn't the final act, but preceding years, the oppressive quiet when love, fear, denial intertwined irreparably. Rob Reiner's devotion to his son was absolute, excessively so. It obscured vision, confined him, ultimately destroyed all he cherished. His tale transcended news, becoming contemporary tragedy warning of consequences when love lacks boundaries. Silence serves as shield, aid arrives delayed. To grasp the full anguish, examine Michelle's origins, the woman central to that family. Michelle Singer Reiner, born March 3, 1955 in New York City, was far more than a famous director's spouse. Accomplished photographer, producer, activist with independent achievements. Raised in nurturing Jewish Upper East Side household, she possessed grace from creativity and resilience, the strength later sustaining her family during collapse. Her narrative predated fame. Mother Nicole Bernernheim Alite survived Holocaust, escaping 1944 Auschwitz death march, reconstructing existence from ruin. That resilience molded Michelle, igniting passion for justice, truth, opposing dangerous silence. Michelle embraced that bravery early. Fluent in French/Spanish, studying at School of Visual Arts, photography became vocation. Initial career unglamorous, assistant carrying gear, adjusting lighting, observing others shine. There she honed observing skill, capturing hidden truths behind facades. Her independent work attracted fortune. By mid-1980s, she created era-defining portraits. 1987's regrettable art of the deal cover notwithstanding, she earned photography respect, revealing beauty and reality. Fate intervened 1989 visiting Barry Sonnenfeld on When Harry Met Sally set, meeting Rob Reiner. Newly divorced Rob couldn't avert gaze. Barry quipped, not Pfeiffer, but friend Michelle Singer. Correct again. Romance progressed rapidly. Months later, Hawaii private wedding, strangers witnessing. One elderly woman praising Princess Bride. Simple moment embodying their uncomplicated bond. Michelle transformed Rob's world, influencing film's hopeful rewrite mirroring their union. Over 36 years, they became admired Hollywood pair, spouses, collaborators, activists, closest friends. Raised Jake, 1991, Nick, 1993, Romy, 1997. Michelle fueled Rob's inspiration. He credited her as primary motivator. Career soared, co-founding entities, co-chairing Castle Rock, producing Shock and Awe, 2017, Emmy-nominated Albert Brooks, Defending My Life, 2023, God and Country, 2024, upcoming Spinal Tap 2, 2025. 2020 Warner Brothers Television deal cemented influence. Beyond creativity, fierce activist, co-founding American Foundation for Equal Rights, crucial overturning Proposition 8, nationwide same-sex marriage legalization, early education advocacy, school funding tobacco taxes, Innocence Project collaboration freeing wrongfully convicted. Wherever injustice appeared, Michelle fought relentlessly. Rob proudly stated, Michelle drives everything. She seeks ending injustice. Called her true north, reminding priorities. Meeting her taught real love. She completed me. Michelle reciprocated 2022 podcast. Instant connection, no regrets. Friends called brilliant, compassionate, tireless, master balancing art/conscience. Built legendary purposeful partnership, not fame-based. But December 14th, 2025 ended that tale tragically. Found lifeless Brentwood home. Shocking industry/world. Son Nick arrested/charged regarding deaths. Tragedy silenced entertainment community. Hearts viewing Reiner's as strength/compassion emblem. CBS rearing Rob's interview post-loss impacted profoundly. Viewers saw a man striving lifelong family unity despite irreparable cracks. Statements shifted from reflection to real-time goodbye. Words mirrored viewers, confronting hidden family struggles behind ideal facades. Reiner's narrative intended eye-opening, reminding boundary-less/honest-less love can destroy what it protects. Heartbreaking element. Rob spoke, not seeking pity, but preventing silence victory, wanting truth visible, though delayed. Thus the lingering question. In his position, how far protect loved ones? When protection turns indulgence, silence becomes complicity? Most disturbing. Can solitary love save unwilling recipients? If personal thoughts/experiences resonate, comment below, voices count. Like, subscribe, share sustaining dialogue. Someone somewhere needs hearing. Next, more concealed truths exploration.